Every year we all start with an idea of what we want to achieve in the 12 months as we look forward. And I was thinking about the month of April, which is the month we're in right now. And I thought, what a great time to just stop and do some reflection on where we are right now. If you started this year with hopes and dreams and resolutions and ideas about what you hoped you would have achieved in 2019, then I like to think that you're very similar to me. And you're probably very similar to a lot of people who start the year with anticipation and who start the year with some level of excitement. 3 months in, the question is, what have you achieved and where are you? And what I'd like to talk about in this session is maybe a simple method, a pathway of stopping and looking back at where you are and then looking forward again to where you want to get to. It's just what I'll consider to be like a checkpoint. If you've ever traveled across different cities, for example, if you travel in certain parts of Europe, as you move from one part of Europe to another, a few months ago I traveled from Sofia in Bulgaria, and I traveled into what country was that? Serbia, yeah, into Serbia, and we went through a checkpoint. As you cross the border from Sofia, Bulgaria, as you leave the border, the boundary of the country, there's what's called a checkpoint. They check your passports and they check the people in the car, and they effectively wish you farewell and bid you farewell. And if you keep moving forward, in a short distance, there's another checkpoint. And that's simply because it's an entry point into another country. Now you're going into Serbia. And there's another checkpoint. They look at your passports because they want to make sure that you have the right valid documents to come in. I like a reference, and this is what's interesting. As we traveled from Sofia into Serbia, you're talking about only maybe a 2 minute distance between both borders. The borders in Serbia, they asked a number of questions. Where have you come from? We said we've come from Sofia. They say, who are you? We identified ourselves, and they say, where are you going? Now, yes, we're coming into their country, but they wanted to understand what part of the country are you going to? And those are great questions. Where have you come from? Who are you? Where are you right now? And where are you going? Every year, we start the year with excitement, anticipation. We start the year with hopes and dreams of what we can achieve and what we believe were possible, what we believe is possible for us to achieve. We all have to stop and ask ourselves 3 or 4 questions. Where am I? Where am I trying to get to? And where have I traveled from? Now, those 3 questions are very important for separate reasons. In today's session, I want you to just stop. Sometimes we get so busy and busy and busy and busy and busy. And in many ways, we mistake movement and activity for productivity and accomplishment. Activity is not the same as accomplishment. When I grew up and growing up, I used to hear the saying. As a matter of fact, my dad would even say, if you want to be successful, you have to work hard. Over the years, I came to realize that some of the hardest working people are the poorest paid. So it's not just about activity. You have to stop and say, is what I'm doing smart? Is this smart work? Am I working hard on smart things? Likewise, it's very easy to start the year and you're going and going and going. And for many people, because we never stop and say, where am I? What tends to happen is we get to the end of the year, we look back, and we feel disappointed. Disappointed because the goals that we set for ourselves at the start of the year, we discover that we haven't achieved any of that. But all of that could have been made more possible if we had simply stopped and said, where am I? So what I'd like you to do in this session is just go with me and let me share some ideas of what perhaps you should consider as you do your own, what I call checkpoint stop. And as you look back and then look forward again. I'd like you to stop before you look back and start reviewing what you've achieved for the year. Before you start looking at your goals, hopefully you had goals as you started this year. If you didn't, perhaps this is a great time to start the year again. I learned something from one of my mentors some time back, and I thought it was profound. You see, I always used to think that if I wasn't committed to a goal at the start of the year, then somehow I had failed. And I learned from my mentor that every day is a day to begin anew. Every day is a new day. It's a new dawn. It's a new you. You can start today. You can start tomorrow. You can begin whenever you choose. All you have to do is decide. You make a decision and then you look forward and then you commit. At the start of every year, there is a lot of emphasis on New Year's resolutions and the importance of resolutions. I never liked that word, New Year's resolutions. I never liked the word simply because, unfortunately, it's one of those words that we use, but we don't really understand what it means. So we throw those words around easily. A resolution simply means you have to resolve. To resolve simply means you decide within yourself, you promise yourself that no matter what happens, you're never going to give up. In other words, you cut all sources of retreat. I talk about Hernán Cortés, a Spanish soldier back in the very early 1900s, I believe, who wanted to conquer the Aztec Empire. Now, my Spanish might not be that good, so I may not be pronouncing that city as well as it should be, but he had this instruction given to him to go conquer another empire. On arrival at the border, effectively arrival from sea, they landed on ground. He asked all of his men to be disbanded, to be brought off the boats. He asked some of his very, very important aides to remove all equipment, everything that they came with. Everything that was important, he said, I want you to bring it out from the boats. The equipment, food, accessories, everything they needed to achieve their goal. He said, bring it out from the boats. Then he gave an instruction, a remarkable instruction. He said, I want you to burn all the boats. Now, think about this. You've journeyed from your hometown to an enemy's territory. You've arrived at the border. You've arrived on shore. Now you're burning the one equipment that you need to get back safely. He said, I want you to burn all the boats. As the boats were going up in flames, he stood up and he said to his men, he said, you see the boats going up in flames. He said, that means that we either go home as victors on the enemy's boats. In other words, we either win or we die. So he cut all forms and sources of retreat. Think about this, if they had those boats and they were potentially losing the battle, it was quite easy for them to run back, get on the boats and journey back home. Because they burned the boats, there was nothing to run back to. That is resolve. Promising yourself that no matter what happens, you find a way. You see, a mother makes a resolution and says, do you know what? I think I want to have a child. I want to bring life into this world. She makes a decision, then it starts. It takes about 9 months for that dream to become a reality. And during that period, she goes through pain, sadness. And that sadness is not because she doesn't want the child. Maybe it's the biological changes and hormones, and she's not used to that, especially if it's her first time. She goes through some inconvenience, both biological, emotional, social, and on the day of delivery, she's happy and excited. And even when it comes to the point of actually delivering the baby, she says, I made this resolution. No matter what the pain is, I can deal with the pain. Eventually, she produces new life. So resolution is something that we don't really understand. We use it in a flimsy way. If you make a resolution, it simply means you're never going to give up. So as you look back in the last 3 months and you look forward to the next, I would imagine, exciting 7, 8 months left before we get to the end of the year, I hope that you can renew your resolution, you can renew your resolve within yourself. Now remember, your resolutions or your goals or your dreams are yours. And there's nothing wrong in making changes. I did this a few months ago. I stopped, and I do it regularly every month. At the end of the month, I usually stop and say, where am I? Am I achieving the goals? And there are some times when I look back and I said, you know what? I gave it my best shot, but I'm falling short. Before I started learning how to live effectively, and that is what I call a constant, never-ending process in life. You have to keep learning and improving how you live. Before I would look back at my goals and I would be somewhat disappointed. I'll be disappointed because I felt, well, I haven't achieved the goal. I learned something. It's your goal. It's my goal. The same way I set the goal is the same way I can change the goal. And I'm not saying you disregard the goal and look for something else. I'm simply saying you can move the deadline. If you haven't achieved it by a particular date, you move the deadline. You see, I believe very much in setting big goals, the kind of goals that excite you and scare you at the same time. The kind of goals that when you think about it, it awakens something in you. As a matter of fact, I believe in goals so big that you need other people to participate in helping you achieve the goal. But big goals and exciting goals, emotional goals, tangible goals, as big as they can come, sometimes they're not always good. Because you see, you also need small goals. Small goals give you inspiration. They give you a feeling of fulfillment. They give you confidence. If you set the goal so big, but you don't set smaller goals that show that you're moving, you're trying your best, you're doing the best you can, you're moving confidently in the direction of your dreams, you're progressing purposefully towards that destination. If you don't have small goals, what you'll find is that there'll be a lot of feelings of either regret or feelings of unaccomplishment in your heart. You need small goals to make you feel that you're doing the right thing, small goals to make you feel and connect with your inner self. And so today, what we're going to do is just think about how we can review the last 3 months and how we look forward towards what I believe will be a very exciting year for you. Now, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to take a piece of paper and a pen, preferably, and I want you to write down 7 things. 7 things that you've done this year that you're proud of. 7 things that you've achieved or that you've accomplished or that you've attempted or that you've done in 2019 that you're proud of or you're happy about. Maybe proud is probably too strong a word. Maybe something that you would look back and say, you would acknowledge yourself. If you were speaking to someone else, like a loved one, and they said, this year I've achieved these 7 things, you would look at the person and say, well done. I want you to do that for yourself. 7 things that you've achieved this year that you're proud of. Now, you might be thinking, well, I don't know where I'm going to find 7 things from. You're not alone. I had the same feeling. 7 things simply means every month you try and remember 2 things you've done. That's 2 things every 2 weeks. And then for this month, we're already 10 days in. That's one more item you have to identify. Now, why am I starting with your successes? Well, I learned from experience, but also by studying other successful people and studying the lives of other people who've achieved much more than I have. I learned a principle of life. That is, as you strive to achieve what I call a dream, or what I might call a big goal, there'll be times when you lack inspiration. There'll be times when the tides come towards you and you might lose hope. There'll be times when you get tired. I was speaking to a friend of mine some time back, And I said that I think I'm having a great experience and I'm having a great year. Now, in reality, I was going through one of the most, what I call character building moments in my life, in my entire life. I use the word character building to emphasize the positive, but more importantly, to suggest that what does not kill you will make you stronger. And Winston Churchill says something that I like. He said, if you find yourself going through hell, he says, don't stop, keep going. In other words, you've paid a price for the suffering. You better get a reward for it. Just stay focused, don't give up hope. Light comes at the end of the tunnel. Suddenly, you find hope and light. And I said to my friend, well, I'm going through one of the most character building experiences of my entire life. But I said something else. I said, I feel as if I've been swimming and I've been swimming against the tides and my hands are tired. And all I want is for the universe to just let the tides just stay silent for just a short period so my hands can recover. I said I was tired. It felt as if you're battling and struggling and battling and struggling and battling and struggling, and you can't swim anymore. Your hands are tired, your feet is tired. And I said, I wish I could get a break, just so that I can just coast, and I would just recover some strength. You see, one of the things that you and I have to do is we can't dictate or predict when the tides will come in, when they'll go out. The best we can do is swim the best we can. And we swim against or with the vicissitudes of the tides. We hope, because we have a dream, and this is where your dream comes in, because you have a picture of where you're going, you try and set your sail, you try and swim in the direction of your dream. Now, if you don't have a dream, if you don't have a goal, if you don't have New Year's resolutions, if you don't have anything you're striving for, what you find is actually the tide just pushes you, what I call hither and thither, not really knowing where you're going to. You might end up somewhere, but you don't really know where that is. So I would say this, look back, identify 7 things you've achieved or done this year. The mistake that I made and that I make regularly is when I'm looking back at what I've done, I tend to try and look for big things that would stand out, things that maybe if I shared with people, they would say, wow, that's impressive. And I realized that it's actually in the small things. You've got to look for the small items. You've got to look, maybe give a good example. Let's say you're a father. This month, perhaps you took out time and you went to the park with your son. Maybe you haven't done that for a few months and you spend maybe 2-3 hours with him, or 1 hour or 30 minutes. But in that time period, you connected with him like you'd never before. You shared your emotions, you listened to him, you felt as though you guys had a rapport, both in spirit, emotionally, and even mentally. And that is an achievement. You know, some young kids go through their entire lives never really experiencing the love of a father. So that could be yours. That could be one simple thing you've done this year that you're proud of. Now, here is the reason. When you've written all these items down, I want you to keep what you've written down. I call this my victory book, my success journal. And the reason is this. When the tides come again and my hands are tired and I can't swim anymore, at the point when you think, just let it go, just let me go down, what you can do is pick up that journal. I call those my victory journals. And what I do is I do what is called a 180 turnaround. You look back 180, you're looking backwards now towards your past. You look at what you've achieved, and suddenly what you find, you have this jolt, this excitement, because you look at yourself and you say, do you know what? I can do this. You know, I've done this, I've done this, I've done that. I can still endure. I can persist until the end. I have the courage. That gives you hope. Your successes and your accomplishments give you hope to advance forward, to advance towards what you want to achieve. Now, once you've done that exercise, now we can stop and look towards the future first by looking at the past. I would say this to you. If you have your goals written down for 2019 or for whatever year you might be watching this, pull those out and just have a look at those. But I want you to read your goals, the desires you had, the dreams, the vision you had for the year. I want you to just look at those dreams and goals, not from the perspective of someone who owns them. Just look at it like a child would. Look at it from a place of curiosity. Look at it from a place of innocence. And I want you to just glaze through those items you had written down. Don't be judgmental. Just read it normally. And I want you to ask yourself, is there anything on this list that, knowing what I know now, I would change? Now, let me make a statement. I'm not suggesting that you try and eliminate goals that are difficult. You see, your shoulders and your body get stronger if you put it under pressure. It's funny. Failure is an intrinsic part of success. Well, you can't have success without failure. As a matter of fact, I call it the pendulum of failure and success. If you swing towards the pendulum of success, you don't go anywhere. Think about this. You know, a pendulum swings both ways. Think about this. If you're trying to get to this point and you're pushing the pendulum, it's quite hard. You're pushing towards that resistance. On the other hand, swinging towards the pendulum of failure is much easier than success. However, it's quite interesting. If you swing up towards failure, you come back. You swing up again, you come back. You notice something, the pendulum is swinging both ways. Suddenly, as you swing towards failure, the momentum of failure propels you towards success. And that's simply because there's something called the law of cause and effect. What you put in, you get out. Some people call it the law of sowing and reaping. Some people call it the law of action and reaction, the law of karma, meaning the universe, nature, life, Dharma, God, Allah, whatever you choose to call it, Buddha, gives back to you what you put in. And if you swing towards failure and you apply the principle of introspection, reflection, and course correction, meaning you're learning and you're trying to improve, what you tend to find is that it pushes you towards success. You see, there's no joy in success. I've come to find that out, and I did discover that in the hard way. The joy of success is well, I shouldn't have said that. I'll say the joy of success is short-lived. Very short-lived. The joy in learning and improving and learning from failure is much more. We learn from failure. We don't really learn from success. Once you've achieved it, the nature of our beings is we want to do something new. Whereas, you see, when you succeed, you and I will celebrate, we'll party, we'll get excited, we'll share our good news. When we fail, we tend to stop and ponder and think about what went wrong. And I hope you do. And that introspection, that process of just being patient and listening to the still small voice within you, identifies something that perhaps you missed, something you should learn, something you don't know, something you neglected, something you didn't pay attention to, and a lot of things perhaps that you didn't focus on. And that knowledge brings understanding. Understanding, if applied, leads towards wisdom. So you see, failure and success are connected. So what I'd like you to do is look at your list of what you had written down for the year. Just glance over it. Ask yourself, is there something on this list that, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't attempt? The purpose of that question is because normally when we start the year, we're excited. Most of us set our goals in one of three ways. Number one, we set our goals out of excitement. That excitement in many cases is based on an external stimuli. Everyone else is doing it, so you have to do it. But you don't actually think and stop and say, do I really want this goal? Is this really me? So we end up setting goals that other people have set for us. Or we set goals that we're trying to impress other people with. We don't stop and say, but is this really me? Stopping and reflecting makes you stop and say, is this really me? Number two, we set our goals because we have a dream and we have a passion to achieve those goals. There's something in us that is propelling us, a pull, something pulling you towards the future, saying, you can do this, you can be more, you can do more, you can have more. Number three, some of us set our goals because we don't know what to do, what else to do. We just do it. And then we hope. Now, once you've looked through your list, identify what perhaps you do differently. Now look through the goals. I want you to identify what is working. I'm going to give you 3 or 4 things to ask yourself as you look through those goals. What is working based on the activities and strategies and processes you're applying every day, which I hope you are. Number two, what is not working? And that needs a lot of honesty. What is working, number one? What is not working? Number three, once you've identified what is not working, you ask yourself, what must I stop doing? Something has to stop. If you keep doing the same thing you're doing over and over again, you're going to get the same result you're getting. And to expect a different outcome whilst doing the same thing is called insanity. It doesn't work. So you must ask yourself, what must I stop? And number four, what must I start doing? 4 simple questions. Once you've identified those, you have, I would say this to you, if you do this honestly, it's almost, it feels like an enlightening process. You just stop and you just say, wow. Because you realize actually that the wisdom is inside, it's within you. You're actually giving yourself what I call divine instructions and guidelines as to moving forward. And once you've done that, I'd like you to then look back at question number 3, which is, what have I achieved and why? What have I achieved and why? Now, when I looked at my goals, what I found was there were some goals that I had achieved quite easily. There were other goals that I hadn't really attempted. I found the result and I found the reason for that. You see, emotions play a huge part in the fulfillment of every goal we set for ourselves. I found that there were some of my goals that were really, really emotionalized by myself. There were others that I had just decided and I chose, but I hadn't emotionally connected with the goals. You must set emotional goals. Tangible goals are great, but goals of what you want to do, what you want to have, where you want to go are great. But until you connect the emotion to it, there's a saying that feeling is the secret. Feeling gets the goal. Now, what you have to do is connect an emotion with the goal. And that's quite easy. Just where you are sitting right now, and think about one of your goals. And ask yourself the question, if I have already achieved this goal, what will it feel like? You know, what will it taste like? What will it sound like? Well, where will I be? What will I do? Who would I be with? What in my life would suggest that I've achieved this goal? Perhaps it could be a loved one saying to you, let's say you have a goal to buy a new car. A loved one saying to you, this is you imagining now, wow, this is a beautiful car you bought and it looks good on you. So what you're doing here is you're emotionalizing the experience of the wish fulfilled. By doing that, what you're trying to do is get emotionally involved. You're bringing in feeling. And once you bring in feeling into the goal, you have power. That's the fuel. It gives you the desire. You see, you can spend a lifetime trying to teach people what to do and how to make their life better. And I found that there was one secret ingredient that without that ingredient, it doesn't matter how great you are a teacher, it doesn't matter how interesting the conversation are, it doesn't matter what planning steps and strategies you've provided, it doesn't matter how great they look, if the person lacks desire, forget it. You see, desire is that beat, is the heartbeat within you, is that feeling, is that possibility within your heart, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. It's the spirit within you saying, I want to grow. I want to expand myself. I want to expand my consciousness. I want to achieve something. I want to expand. I want to move forward. I don't want to stay stuck. You have to awaken the giant within you. Awaken that spirit. How do you awaken the spirit within you? Desire. Desire is the triggering mechanism. It's that spark. Once you have desire, your desire can actually fuel the goal. Most people set their goals. I did this for so long. You set the goal without any desire. You set the goals without a feeling. You set the goals without emotion, and therefore, you don't attempt the goal. You tend to focus on things that you're really excited about. And so once you've done that exercise of saying, what have I achieved and why? You identify that in those areas that you've maybe made some progress, you were excited, you were willing. Maybe you had a picture in your mind of what it would look like and feel like and taste like and be like when you've achieved it. Now, what you have to do is try and replicate those for your other goals. Now, so you've looked through your goals, you've identified what is working and why you've made some progress. It's important to then stop and say, great, where am I trying to get to? If you've ever been to maybe a big supermarket or maybe a mall, you find these in parts of London along the streets. They're maps. And if you are in a location that you're not really certain about, maybe it seems quite new to you, you usually find a map. And on the map, there's usually a black indication that says, you are here. Now, you already have a list of where you want to get to before the end of the year. The sign that says you are here is great because it tells you, proportionate to where you started from and in proportion to where you're trying to go, what is the best way to achieve the goal. It's like a GPS in a car. A GPS does one of three things when you want to travel. The first thing it would do, it would ask you, where's your destination? You put in the destination. The second thing it would do is it will extrapolate and it will identify your location. It doesn't ask you for that information because you can find that information remotely. The third thing it will do is it will calculate the best way to get to your destination, giving you options. Do you want the fastest way to get there? Do you want the route that goes through maybe petrol stations and malls? Do you want to go through particular locations? It will give you the best way to get to your destination. Now you have to apply the same principle in your life now, looking forward. You know where you started from, you know where you are, you know where you're trying to get to. I would say this, there is no hurry in life. Enjoy life, relax, and take life easy. There might be goals that you need to achieve before the end of the year, but nothing is life and death. Nothing. See, nothing is ever as it first appears. Just try and relax through life. You know, if you haven't achieved the goal, maybe you could do better. Just say to yourself, you're better than this. It's so easy to be critical of yourself. If we think about this, and I know I'm deviating from what I want to share with you, the words that we say to ourselves either empower us or disempower us. It's either disempowering or empowering. And I found just sometimes listening to myself, if I make a mistake, back in the day, it was so easy for me to say, what an idiot. Oh, you're stupid. Oh, I can't believe you did this. Some of the words we say to ourselves, we wouldn't dare utter those words to other people. Think about your loved one, maybe your sister, your mother, your father, your wife, your partner, whatever it might be, a friend.